Hello, my name is Janice Davies. I am a professional speaker and I have been a workshop facilitator. And I had this when I was running my own corporate training and speaking business. And I lost that about 12 years ago through the final global financial crisis. And what I decided to do, rather than hang around and pick it up again, I picked up on 3 ideas that were absolutely amazing that I received. And I've spent the last 10 or 12 years writing the world's first interactive sing-along movie. And so it's a new concept and it's interactive with phone app and the quizzes. Some of this information is in there. But now as I move forward ahead, what I want to do is include my journey and the information from the movie in my presentations rather than all this workshop information. However, in saying that, this as a standalone workshop is fantastic. I traveled around New Zealand for 7 years as a public workshop, and then from there I would get invited to go in-house and do it in-house. So this information has been sitting on my website, on my computer, and I thought I would just give it out as a workshop. It's normally a 3-hour workshop. I'm going to try and skimmer it down to 30 odd minutes, so it's a lunchtime break. What you can do is when there's a lot of information, you can just stop and read that yourself. Obviously, if you want me to come and run it in-house, I can do, because I've ran this workshop so many times. But as I say, I'm moving forward and I want to talk about the movie journey and the information in the movie rather than be marketing myself with this workshop. So it is actually also something that I can do as a keynote, which is what I'm wanting to move into, or I'm actually going to do a TED Talk on this as well. So it's the same information delivered in 3 different formats, which will come out before the end of the year, bit by bit. I'm filtering that information through. So what's included in here is a lot of information that is helpful so that you understand who you are, who the other people are, what's actually happening, and what it is that you can do. And so when we look at the difficult people, it's all our customers, all our people at work. And then also the same information can be used actually in personal relationships as well. My stories today are going to be the workplace relationships. So the most important thing is when we think of ourselves, because we are in control of how we react to these difficult people. So within all of us, we've got 4 personalities, 2 are our majors and 2 are our minors. And so we think that people will react to us the same way that we react to them, which is absolutely not on. So if you look at these 4 birds, the owl, the eagle, the peacock, and the dove, they've got all different personalities. And, if you think, are they going to get along? You'd say no. Well, that's exactly right. They do not, and nor do they in the business world as well. So I'm going to go around and tell you which department they work in. So the owl is obviously, we see that as the wise, wisdom. And so those are all left brain analytical people that work in accounts, engineering, where you've got to, make sure all the measurements are right on the bridge so it's not going to fall down. Anything that is in to do with left brain analytical. We then go to the eagle, and these are our team leaders, CEOs. And if you think of an eagle, they've got long vision, so they look down on everybody and they get an idea of the vision of where they're going, which is the same as with the company or the team. And then the peacock, showy and flashy, but yet these are the most important people because these are sales as well. If you haven't got sales in your business, you're not going to have a business. And so these are all the people that wear bright clothes. They work also in media and writing, arts, creative, sales. These are also the entrepreneurs. And then we look at our dove personality, and they are the people who are the caregivers, the peacemakers, our doctors, our nurses, and in a business, it might be the secretaries, the PAs, and all that sort of stuff. So the 4 personalities are different parts of your business, and they don't get on particularly well at times because they all think differently, and they've got to learn to understand each other and how they can communicate to make that better. When I do this in a workshop, I go through a lot more information. I'm just skimming it here for you. Now, the next thing we want to look at is the different types of relationships that we have in our personalities. Now, this is a process called transactional analysis. It's fantastic. It's more complex, and I've broken it down so it's really, really quite easy to understand. So there's 3 roles and then 4 scenarios. So I'm going to start with the 3 roles that we're going to be doing. The first is a parenting role. And this is where somebody is saying, well, you do it my way, or otherwise it's, you're going to get fired from here, or, whatever. And so they're doing it sort of from a point where they're fear-mongering their staff, and that does not go down well. And then we get the other parenting role, and this is just a role. It's not actually that they are a parent, but if you think about it, that's kind of what parents do, look after and bring up their staff. And that's what the nurturing people do. In a family, they're nurturing, they're pulling up, well, I'm going to help you to learn this. What do you want to learn? What are you having difficulty with? And so those are 2 different types of management that are happening in a business. The one that's the fear-mongering, or the one that's nurturing. So moving on to the second role that we have, and this is where the staff are either whinging and moaning and groaning, and I've certainly worked with some like that, or and it's always somebody else's fault. Or the other one who's creative. And what we say there is that somebody that wants to learn and is open to learning and trying and, coming up with new ideas, rather than being a whinging sort of person. And if you've ever seen an adult do a temper tantrum, this is the whinging child role. And I've got one in my movie as well. Absolute classic. A 6'4" man doing a tantrum. A sight to see. So that's the second role. And then the third role that we have is where the people are working together. So they're listening, communicating, negotiating, and compromising. And that's the type of relationship that we want to have. However, it doesn't come easily to begin with. So now we look at the second part of transactional analysis, which is the relationship scenarios. So we've got one person here that's not okay, which could be the parenting role, the one that's critical and pointing the person. And we've got the other person here who's not okay, which could be the whinging and the moaning child role. So at that stage there, we've got 2 people who have not got good personality, communication skills, confidence, and so they're at loggerheads, and that's most definitely one that is around a lot. Now, the second one that we've got, and I'm going to start with the I'm not okay. So that could be the critical child again, but then we've got, and this could be, a staff member, but then we've got the nurturing boss or the HR person say, you're okay, I'm going to try and teach you how to do this and support you through this. But we've still got the other person who's moaning and groaning and the world's against them. So we've got, a positive and a negative there. The second one we've got, the third one, is where we've got somebody that's okay, and this is the part that I've got in the movie, where I was working in a situation that I was a tutor, and we had a bully come in, and he was trying to blame me, as he had blamed all the previous staff members, and I was the last on the list, about why things weren't okay for him. But I was strong enough and I understood what was happening, so I was actually able to say, hey mate, it's not my problem, it's your problem. But to be in that space, I had to have the knowledge that I've got and the confidence to be able to do it. But still, it's a relationship that is not cohesive and supportive in a work environment from the person who's not okay. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a moment. And then we come back to the fourth relationship scenario, where we've got both parties okay. They're negotiating, they're listening, they're communicating. So this is the type of relationship that you want to have in your business. You also want to have this in your personal relationships as well. So professional and personal relationships. So we've just gone through the three roles and the four relationship scenarios. So I'm just going to explain it a little bit more. Usually I'm doing this on a whiteboard, but I'm going to be bringing up in a moment one of the slides from my movie. So when we look at those two unhappy people, which is what we talked about earlier when we had the critical parent and the whinging child, it's a lose-lose relationship. People can't communicate, can't compromise, and they can't enjoy life. They're always sort of blaming the other person. So brings me to this quiz. So this is one of my quizzes from my movie, and we've got the two sad faces at the top. We've got the win and the lose, then the opposite, lose, and the win, and the win-win. So if you have a look at any of those there that have got a lose on them, the sad faces, and we've got 4 of them, they are the people that have got no communication skills except not aggressive or passive communication. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. They are in dysfunctional relationships, and that one at the top, that's where most of the dysfunctional relationships are globally. Obviously can happen in businesses as well. And these people here are the domineering, the aggressive type of personality, where it's always somebody else's fault. They're blaming somebody else. They're never going to learn. And it's a situation that's going to stay there until one person chooses to learn. So when we go down to the second row, we've got, for example, the win and the lose, and that could be the HR officer and the person that's at work that's moaning and groaning. So they're wanting to teach them, or the boss teaching them to come up. So teaching them that they can be positive, change their thinking, send them on training, give them training, etc. And then we've got the next one here. Now I explained about my work situation where I was getting blamed for something by a bully, and he'd done it to everyone else in the staff, and I was the last person, and I didn't accept that. So because of the knowledge that I had, so that one, there was one person was positive, me, the bully was not. And then the last one, which is the win-win, where we've got the opportunity where we can discuss and negotiate. So all the people that have got the win in the smiley faces have done a certain amount of communication skills. They're confident. They know how to compromise, negotiate, and they work together to be able to create a good workplace relationship. Also, they work together to make a good personal relationship. And as I say, this can flick over into your personal life as well. But it's understanding and where you are. And I do have to say, when I first learned this, I was up in a lose-lose personal relationship. I didn't understand that until I learned. But my story is that I've been bullied at high school, and I had lost my confidence and negotiation and communication, and I just became a peacemaker. So that's the level I was at when I learned this information, and I've been applying it all my life, working up to win-win, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's helpful to understand so that you know where you are and where you want to go to. So let's move on again to the next phase. So as I say, to begin with, those people with the win-win and the smiley faces have got high self-esteem. So they know who they are. They're able to communicate, express themselves, and get mentors and coaches and guides if they need to. And you can stop and read this more fully later if you want to. And the way that they live is that they're always learning and growing, lifelong learners, happy with where they are, know that they've got to change to be able to upgrade themselves. And so these people here are the ones who really are the ones that are more successful because they've gone on that journey, and they know that they have to keep learning and growing to be able to create the success at work and actually at home for themselves as well. So when we look at the opposite of that, which is all the people with the unhappy faces, the lose-lose type of relationship, and most definitely I was like this when I started my journey 35 years ago. So these people here, and look, when you look at how many people are searching online for low self-esteem, and even in New Zealand here, our workplace bullying is atrocious. And I have actually taken one workplace, one boss, we went to mediation, absolutely dreadful behavior. And so this is rampant in New Zealand, and it's actually rampant right around the world. It starts as children. We pick up this information about self-esteem, low self-esteem, from the way that we are treated, whether it be from our parents or schools or bullying or anywhere. And we don't know, and I did not know when I did a quiz for myself, when I was at a parenting course, that I actually had low self-esteem. I knew that I wasn't happy, and when I did this course, I was minus out of 20, minus 20 out of 10. I'm now 10 out of 10, as you might be able to gather. But it's understanding that this is critical for people who want to be able to move on and upwards in life, to understand where they are and where they need to be, and what are the skills that they've got to learn to be there. So we look at a lot of our dysfunctional relationship, drugs, alcohol, all these people, suicides, all these people out in the world personally are actually got low self-esteem and have not got the ability to be able to move forward until they know actually what it is that they need to do. So the way that they live, they live their life. They can be perfectionists, because that's the only way that they know. If everything's perfect, they'll think that they have got it all right, but then they are so narrow-minded in their thinking. Always wanted to be bigger. The rivalry can be, I've got to be the winner at all cost. The violence can be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, bullying. And of course, if it's anybody at all is experiencing physical, I always suggest that they go and talk to their HR or counsellor or somebody that can help them. There's in their way, there's only one way to do it, and that's their way. So they just think they've got the best knowledge to do it, and that's it. You follow my plan or whatever. And most certainly within a job description, there are tasks that you have to do, but whether you're doing tasks that are not part of your job, and you've been guided to do it by somebody else or whatever. Trying to make the others feel guilty or blame, jealousy, they're always jealous and envy of other people. How come they can do it and I can't do it? Well, they've got to upgrade themselves and learn some new things. So these are all the lose-lose people, and these are the people that it's not a personalities are different, but the relationship scenario that you're having is one like this, down at, rather than this here, which we've got to get to, and you've actually got to learn how to be able to have it like that. Now this here, as I say, the bullying in New Zealand is horrific. Globally it's horrific, and you may even know some people in government. So they often don't know any other behaviour, not that gives them any excuses, but the thing is that the people who are more passive are the ones who are at the end of their negative behaviour. And it's happening at schools, cyber, workplaces, homes, and the more that we can teach people, which again is one of the reasons I wanted to share this, because if people understand it, they have an opportunity to learn. So again, if I always say, if people are getting bullied, and most certainly when I ran this workshop around New Zealand, it was incredible, the number, and it was, I would have to say, 99% that came were women that were getting bullied in the workforce, and most certainly one was a very big company, a lawyers company in New Zealand, and another happened in real estate. It happened lots of different companies. So it is spread widely throughout New Zealand. And so when that's happening, I always say, go and talk to your HR officer. And I know most people, myself included, I ended up leaving the job because the bullies aren't going to change. So it's how we deal with it is the decision we've got to make. So how can we make our relationship get to this level that we're, listening and communicating? And the thing that we've got to do, if we understand where we are, that we're a win and a lose, it's being able to get the message across that we want to share with the other person. So, if we're sending the message, we're the sender, the other person is the receiver, and the message that we communicate has to be at a level that they can understand, and not in technical jargon, and in everyday language that is easily understood. Because what happens is the message gets distorted by the people's viewpoints, either, and even the fact that you may be trying to give them a message when they're not receptive to listening. So there's lots of things about effective communication that can be improved to make sure that the message is heard by the receiver. And as I say down the bottom, there are lots of things that get in the way. So what we've got to be able to do is, if we're wanting to talk to somebody, communicate, we've got to be able to find a better way that we can actually communicate with them. And so there are some tips there that you can read. Now, when we don't get it right, it obviously, mistakes happen. It's like, well, I told you that. And I can remember one job, actually it was the last one, I would be told something, how to do a new program or whatever. Just told once, and then I was expected to quickly write down notes as they were talking to me, and I was supposed to know it. My query to them was, where was a manual? Because everyone has different ways that they learn. Some listen, some read, some write. And so if we're not sharing it in a way that's going to help our learner, there's got more spaces, more room for a misinterpretation. So if we are wanting to share something that we think, an I statement is the way that we can do that. And an I statement is claiming, this is what I think. I think that, you could do a better job. Here's some ideas that I can give you. I've written them down for you. Come and ask me if you've got any questions or whatever. It's you actually claiming your power, and not as a power to be over dominating, but just empowering yourself to share what you think is the problem. And that is where you have the best opportunity to be able to express yourself fluently, but you do have to actually learn to be able to do that. So it comes down to this: I think, I feel, I am. And that's actually you standing in your own power that I just mentioned. As I said, not power, empowering yourself, but your own personal power. So if you don't understand it, of course, it's about asking us questions. And then the next thing is to learning to say no. So often, and in the workshop, there was a lot of people that worked in administration who were getting work dumped on them. And the dove personality, which are the people that work in administration, reception, have the ones that people will come and, just dump on them. And because they like to be helpful, they often can't say no. And so learning to say no is the most important word to be able to empower yourself. And I remember one workshop, I had two real estate receptionists. One had learned to say no. And she said she would say to people at work, if you got to get the information to me 5 o'clock tonight, because I'll be entering it first thing tomorrow morning. If you're late, it won't happen. And she said it took some training to get them to be able to do that, but she had her schedule she had to do. And the other one had a number of agents who didn't want to learn the computer and the new system, and they were men, and they didn't want to learn that, so they would keep dumping it on the receptionist who couldn't say no, and so what they would dump the work on her, then they'd go out and have a coffee, and she was coming in the weekend and doing the work. And so it was good to have another agent there, a receptionist to actually, I was explaining it, but somebody to back it up so she could understand, because this real estate receptionist who was just about at burnout was about to leave her job. So what we've got to be able to do is understand another person's feelings, what's happening for them, and we can say that, I understand you're not feeling okay in this position, or you're not understanding, or what's happening for you, that we can see if we can fix this. Because to be able to replace a staff member is very expensive and costly, and it is also costly if they're underperforming. So what can you do to change their mindset, the positiveness, to get them to go out and be more positive about the work? And one of the things that I always say, which I think I've got it in this one, but I incorporate it much more in a different workshop, but I will say it here, is that when I talk about attitude, I say, well, what does your wage pay? what do you do with your wages? And I talk a little bit more about that, so they understand that their job is important to them because it pays their mortgage, it pays for the children, it feeds their wife, it feeds, etc. So when they flip their mindset around, they understand that although they mightn't exactly like what's happening at work right now, and they're happy to moan and groan about it, without that job, they're not going to have their mortgage paid and their children fed. So I always suggest to people that while you're there, learn as much as you can and stay in that job, and be positive about it, because it's giving you a weekly wage to be able to help you have the lifestyle that you have. So empathy is understanding where they are, like basically walking in their shoes. So one of the things that I want to just talk about is the way that we communicate. And I mentioned this earlier. There's 3 different types: passive aggressive. And I used to be passive. So I know what it feels like, and it's not okay. You just don't feel okay. And it's because I didn't have the confidence to stand up to somebody that was bullying me. As I started this journey, this is where I was at this passive communication, and I upgraded myself as I learned more knowledge. But these are this person here with the passive communication is in the top level of relationships, where it was lose-lose, and also the ones where it was the lose, or the not smiley face, and they haven't got the confidence and they don't know how to be able to communicate. Now, the other person that is up there, which is the 2 faces with the lose relationships, and the lose ones further down, is, and even like I said, the boss and the person pointing their finger saying, doing it my way or else. This is the aggressive, and this is not a good communication style as well. They think that they've got all the answers, and that you have to do it like this and by this time or whatever. And admittedly, as I say, if there's a job description and it's your job description, there are rules and regulations about, you following your job description, but it's about looking and also seeing how other people are communicating. And if there's this communication style happening, it's not going to be helpful in the business. And they really don't care about the other person. They just want somebody done. And this is the bullying type of behavior. I always say here as well, because aggressive can be verbally, it's just blurping out a whole lot of abuse, and if anyone again is getting physical abuse, then most certainly, or feeling threatened, go and see HR officer, counsellor, or whatever. Go for a look. And this can be as much as leaning over and thumping the desk. And I've certainly had a 6'6" man, 6 or 6'4", leaning over me, thumping the desk. I must admit I was shaking when I stood up, but yeah, he left. So what we are wanting is that win-win type of communication. And this is where we're able to express what we think with an I statement, be honest, direct, and not apologizing for everything we do. We've got this, and this is how our department does it. For example, and I often have used this, and again, there's been more information shared in a workshop, but if we've got somebody in accounts, and the person which is the owl, and somebody who is the peacock in sales, and they're not getting their reports in on time, it's almost like, well, what can we do to make it different for them? It's almost saying, well, if you don't get your sales reports and you don't get your bonuses for the month, or you don't get your wages for the month, but then it's also, what can the owl do, even if they make that report more colorful, easier to be able to understand, then you've got somebody that is understanding they've got to get the sales report in, but it's an easier process rather than a very complex process. But to be able to communicate that assertively between 2 different personality groups, or the dove and the eagle, or any of them, it's being able to do that in a place that is open, and everyone is available and thinking, and the communication is at a level that they can actually be open to listening, learning, and making the changes. And as I said here, I am skimming through it because I've always usually had a whiteboard, and this is a 3-hour workshop, but it gives you an idea. So the other thing is, obviously, we're all the same but different. There are gender and culture issues in every work situation. So it's been open and understanding to that as well. And this workshop is not about this, but it's being understanding about other people and working within the rules and the regulations of the company. So one way that we can make some changes is when we're having to give feedback, and I've already mentioned about doing this in a place that is safe, whether it's in an office or over a coffee somewhere. But there's certain ways that we can give feedback so that it's more acceptable by the person that you're giving it to. And this is called the feedback sandwich. It's based on what you're doing, keep doing this, stop doing this, start doing that. And, it could be what you do that I value is that your reports are always in on time and they're always up to date. One thing I'm having difficulty with is that some mornings you're not getting to work till 9:10. What I would like you to do instead is really make an effort to get here at work at 9 o'clock, because we've got other people who are waiting for your reports, which are being held up or something like that, so it's explaining, you're great at this is the problem, can you do it this way instead? So it's just it's giving some acknowledgement of the great things that are happening, the challenge and the new behavior that you would like. Now, when we do something like this, rather than just the growly, what happens, and this is an old statistic and it's probably been updated more so, and I listen a lot to Dr. Joe Dispenza, who works a lot with heart math, and so do other people, is that when our heart is stressed, in the middle one, we are very much, up and down, and our body is closing up and we're not listening. And so what we do is, if we say, look, you're doing this and it's great, our heart immediately goes down to the bottom level, which is a nice, smooth rate of beating, and we feel better. And so therefore, when we are asked to do something differently, we are much more receptive and open to doing something differently and making a change. And so that's the best way that you're going to get results from the people that you're having challenging with at your work, who may be the people that are the upside down smile, the lose type of smile, and you are wanting to train them up to be more positive in your workplace. So another thing that is statistics, and this, as I say, this workshop has sat on my, this is the one I was just had actually explaining a little bit. So this is just doing a slightly different way. Describe the behavior. Sometimes you're late for work, and in this case I've got realistic and concrete. What's happening is I've got staff complaining, and I'm uncomfortable with their constant complaints. And then what you do is you hand it back to them and you say, well, what could you do to solve this problem? So in this situation, you are not telling them that you want them to be at work at 9 o'clock every morning instead of 9:10. You're asking them how they could solve it. And they might come up and say, oh, okay, so that's the days that I've got to drop my children at school, or I get caught up in a bus lane or whatever. Maybe I'll start my day at, 6:30 in the morning and set the alarm for 6:30 instead of 7 o'clock or something, so that therefore I've got that extra time in the morning. So therefore they're solving their own problem, because people have got the nous, most of them, they have got the nous. It depends whether they want to solve the problem or not. But it's just handing them back to them and saying, well, how do you think you could fix this? Okay, so now we're back at the attitude, and this is absolutely, one of the most important things, because our brain, if we let it run on its own, will give us negativity. And so what we've got to do is train our brain. And I know when I realized, and this was before I was back in the workforce, I was a young mum, that my brain would just go in negative and get into a spiral. And so the way that I changed that was I always had books with quotes in them. So whenever I do that, I just open and read whatever the quote was, because your brain can only think one thought at a time. So why not make it a positive thought? So when we've got when we've got people that are thinking negative, which is the lose-lose type relationships, the people that are unhappy, the dysfunctional relationships that haven't actually done any personal development or communication, they haven't learned how to be able to control their mind. And so let me assure you, I've been doing this for, years. How old is my daughter? 30 odd years, to be able to constantly change my thoughts to the positive, and what have I learned out of this or whatever. So it is all about attitude. And I've got this is as a phone app quiz in the movie. So it's how do we change our attitude? And as I said before, one of the examples I've often used when I've done a more extensive workshop on attitude is get people to write down. So you get your weekly wage, and what do you spend that money on? And they'll come up with the mortgage and the kids and da-da-da. And so if you didn't get that wage, how would you feel? And it's almost like them understanding that the money they're getting from work is helping them to have the lifestyle that they've got. And without that, they wouldn't have that lifestyle. So therefore, that automatically gets them to think a little bit more positive. The other thing I often say is, well, who pays your wages? And they'll say, oh, the boss. And then I get them to think, well, what if you've got no customers? And so if they're dealing with the customers, it's understanding that it's actually the customers who are paying their wages, because no customers, no business. So it's always just little things. Attitude, absolutely critical. And it is about how to be able to change that to that positive thinking as well. Okay, so that's most of the things. Here's a few other little tips and tricks from this workshop. Ask yourself, what were you really looking for? Put it in writing. Often people won't complain if they have to put it in writing. Some other things, focus on one step at a time. Employees, shy person, praise for positive behavior. And then there's a whole lot of extra bits and pieces here, some are outside the square box. So I hope you've kind of enjoyed that. It is a very pushed together overview of the workshop that I travelled around New Zealand with. People loved it, and so lots of positive feedback. The most important was actually about the personalities. People loved understanding the personalities, and I would go into that and I'd spend 30 minutes on that, because there's a whole lot of fun things as well, because you understand yourself and then you understand the other people. And then how do you communicate with them? Because you can learn that if you're the way that you communicate, if the opposite personality is logical, well, then how do you change your communication to be short, sharp, and to the point rather than waffle? So, as I say, this is now, I will do it as a keynote if people want it. I will do this workshop if somebody wants me to come and do it in-house. And I will be doing it as a TED Talk as well. But a lot of this information I've switched around and I've put into the movie. And so that's the way that I'm wanting to share it now. But it has just made a huge effect to my life, because I've had to learn all this information for myself. I've had bullies at high school, and then I've had bullies in relationships, and I've certainly had bullies in the workplace. So every time I've upgraded my own communication skills and confidence. So if you want any more information, please get in contact with me. My email is janice@attitudespecialist.com. Oops, those phone numbers down the bottom are wrong, so please do not follow those. My phone number is 021 645 511. So these are just some of the things. And as I say, this is an old workshop, but look out for the next one that will be coming along. And I hope it gives you an idea and gives you a few things to think about if you've got difficult people in your own life. And if you want any more information, please email me, Janice@attitudespecialist.com. Thank you.